Have you ever found yourself stuck? I mean, not physically stuck, though I can't imagine that's much fun either. But I mean mentally stuck when you just can't get started or move beyond a certain point in a task. I have. Over the years, I find myself in situations where I felt trapped, seemingly without options, and in places sometimes I just don't want to be. If I'm being honest, I often find myself stuck in new and creative ways, which can be downright exhausting. And then to make things more complex and frankly annoying, imagine also being a chronic overthinker who then overanalyzes where I'm stuck and why. It's like driving in a traffic circle and knowing that I need to get off at an exit, but being unable to decide which exit is the right exit. This talk? I've been driving in circles for weeks. The more I talk to people, though, the more I realize that I'm not alone in any of this. Many of us are all stuck in one way or the other, just trying to figure out where we're going. Even though I keep getting stuck, though, over the years I've developed some strategies for escaping the circle. My secret? Shifting perspectives. No matter the setting, whether it's at work or volunteering or hanging out with my family, the constant thread that weaves through my life is my ability to shift my vantage point to a new one. In my experience, there are two types of perspective shifts that can take place. The first is the metaphorical shift, where the desired outcome might not be tangible or concrete, but still incredibly necessary. Like one of those times that you might take a new opportunity or a new challenge even and make it into an opportunity. The second is a perspective shift that is literal and necessary to effectively complete a task. This could, finally see options that might have been there all along, but because you have now looked at them from a new vantage point, you now see them. Recently, I realized that I had the first 30 days in a row home with my family in 18 months. I'd been so locked into my solo perspective that I realized that even though I was home, I wasn't mentally present enough to settle into being home. Conveniently, it was our time to take our family annual trip to the beach for some rest, relaxation, and reconnection. Now, before I share this next part of the story, this is an appropriate place to mention that my wife, Nina, and I are pretty competitive. Like sometimes we race each other in our puzzle app to see who could finish first. The word search, it's our favorite. And I can proudly say that my brand of ADHD helps me zero in on the hidden words, while her brand of ADHD typically distracts her just long enough to let me win. Just hang on to that little nugget in the back of your mind. We're gonna head back to the beach now, though. My favorite time of day when we're at the beach, though, is when we walk along the water together, playing, splashing, doing beach things. And like many beaches, there are always plenty of beautiful shells. However, this beach is special because if you look, you can find shark teeth. Over the years, we visited, my wife and kids have found dozens upon dozens of these shark teeth. I've walked the same shores at the same time, looking in the same places, and I have never found one. If only the shark tooth was as good or as easy as finding the word in the word search, that competitive voice in my head would not be quiet and wondered why I could not find them. This visit was different, though. I found myself being present with the people that I valued most in my life instead of retreating inward, leaving my single vision perspective behind. I started connecting and sharing. I started laughing. I started listening with my whole being, and I felt lighter. Things became clearer. I didn't just need this break. I realized that I could have kept going the way I was, because walking the beach is lovely, with the company I was keeping without shark teeth. But, shark teeth, pretty cool to find, right? But when I stopped and I looked for a minute and took a deep breath and actually took the break that I so desperately needed, with my eyes open, slowing down just enough, I looked down again on the sand and I found my first tooth. And it wasn't just one that day, it was many for the days to follow, and actually every trip since. It's really pretty cool. So now we both know that these teeth didn't just appear. They were probably there all along. I just couldn't see them. There were too many things happening in my head. I couldn't focus long enough to clearly see beyond what I thought I needed to see. Whatever the case, by being willing to shift my own perspective, by being willing to look at the world around me differently than I had been, I was able to see the things that I had missed before. Though metaphorical perspective shifts can be influential and impactful, to your mindset and your well-being in some cases, the need for that literal shift is necessary to complete your task at hand. Which brings me to my next story. A few summers ago, my wife and I were out running errands on a beautiful day. We received a phone call from some friends asking for help. Hey, you around? I need help moving a trunk. Even though we had a busy day ahead, we did some quick mental math. We figured we could shift a few things around, no problem. How long do you think it'll take for us to move a trunk? We'll be there in a little bit. We'll be over, don't worry. So when we arrived, we were greeted in the front yard, and it looked like our friends were outside taking advantage of the gorgeous day to do some yard work, and they were waiting for us. And it was just a nice day to be outside. And after some pleasantries and some hey, how's it going, and quick catch up, I said, hey, so where's this trunk you want us to move? Over there, she pointed. We followed her finger, pointing to just a short distance away, and she wasn't pointing at the garage. She wasn't pointing at the attic or the shed or the living room, or even the trunk of her vehicle holding a trunk. She pointed at a massive tree trunk in the middle of the front yard, still planted with roots that ran deep into the ground. I'm not even kidding. Now, Nina and I, we're not really found speechless, but this was just one of those occasions where we looked at each other and we were shocked, and words were not easily coming. Clearly, the first definition that popped into my head about a trunk was incorrect. In my mind, I was thinking about a 3 by 4 foot box of 80 pounds of junk that needed to be moved from the attic to the basement. By the time she said, over there, and my brain connected massive tree trunk, which, by the way, longest 2.6 seconds of my life, I had a few different things come to mind. First, that's not a trunk. I mean, it is. Is she joking? Then the follow-up was, I really need to stop wearing flannel around this family. Apparently, it throws those lady lumberjack vibes, and they're getting the wrong idea here. And then finally, how the heck are we going to do this? I'd be lying to say that I wasn't overwhelmed with the sense of panic that came with the size of this task alone. The only trees that I had experience with taking down came from a Christmas tree farm. But I did what I always do. I started to ask questions. We put our heads together, and then we literally dug in. We surrounded the trunk with axes and hammers and shovels and saws. We called more friends for backup. We canceled our evening plans. We tied ropes around the tree and then to the neighbor's truck, and that only resulted in the truck frame groaning in disapproval, and the trunk did not budge. And I swear I even heard the trunk laugh at us. This was a fiasco, and my friends, we were stuck. What started with fear and dread turned to optimism and purpose. Though we made some progress, by the end of the day, as the sun started to go down, we accepted defeat. Trunk 1, humans 0. It was a valiant effort made by our crew, and together we made a significant dent in the trunk itself. But in the end, we accepted that we were in over our heads. A few days later, we called some professionals. They came and they finished the job. And sometimes there's a good reason why you're stuck. Sometimes the tools and the resources at our disposal just aren't enough. Sometimes realizing that alone is the perspective shift that we need. So take a minute and think about a project that is your trunk, a really big, deep roots, bumper tearing kind of problem. Maybe it's a project that you're working on where you start to chip away, and you are working towards what you believe to be your desired results. And then you realize there are actually more deliverables required for this project, and what you're developing doesn't take all of them into account. You spend hours looking at your options, trying to figure out your next logical step. But you're stuck. The actual solution is different every time, but the basic steps, the perspective shifts I try to make are the same and actually pretty simple. First, you need to stop going in circles. I need to remember to slow down, and even better, if I can, I take a moment to pause. 2, overthinking limits options. I usually take a moment to remind myself that there are usually more options available than what I can see, and often my overthinking places limits on those options. 3, I center myself and bring in different friends and colleagues who often see different options in seeking different perspectives. I leverage their perspectives to make sure that I am seeing a complete picture of the whole situation at hand. 4, I break the project into manageable pieces. When I'm ready to take action, like the trunk, sometimes I need to take my one big problem and break it into smaller, more manageable pieces to get the job done. Seeing small wins toward my overall progress keeps me motivated. And 5, find alternatives. Sometimes an option that wasn't on the table at the beginning ultimately becomes your solution. It could be as simple as rethinking what counts as success, but you may need to bring in professionals. Today, whenever I find myself blindly staring for shells or staring at shells for a shark's tooth that never shows itself, or say yes to a project that turns out to be a tree trunk instead of a junk trunk, after the initial annoyance that's bound to creep in, I take a deep breath, or let's be real, I take 5 deep breaths, depending on how frustrated I actually might be, and I reset. With each breath, I mentally slow down just enough to shift that perspective to where I can see the world around me clearly again and tackle any problem that comes my way. Whether it's moving a massive tree trunk or finding the metaphorical shark teeth in the sands of your minds, the essence lies in acknowledging the need for that shift in perspective. Getting stuck doesn't have to be the end of the story. We all get stuck, but we don't have to wait to be rescued. With the right perspective, it can be the beginning of a new road traveled. Thank you.